All right, so we're going to introduce interviewing for information technology positions. And the first phase of this I wanted to cover, I'm just calling part one of interviewing, and it's going to focus in on interview preparation. So, what does interview preparation look like? We're going to address a couple common mistakes as well as some perceptions that employers have within an interview situation, and how you can distinguish yourself from the masses and make yourself an attractive candidate. We'll talk about the contact process that generally occurs within an interview and the outreach that employers will do to you. We'll talk about the essential research you're going to have to do in preparation for an interview with an organization. And then we'll cover some of the preparation necessities, including some of the materials that you should plan on bringing to an interview setting. All right, so first of all, just some common interview mistakes. I'm not going to cover all of these in detail, and obviously I know you can pause this slide and take a look at some of them. But this is based on some survey data that we've collected over the past several years and some responses of our employers. First of all, just recognizing 33% of bosses know within the first 90 seconds, so within the first minute and a half, whether or not they want to hire somebody. So a critical component of this is just recognizing that your first impression, everything from the way in which you communicate, the nonverbal cues you give off, your dress, your overall appearance in that interview situation is very important in terms of formulating that positive first impression of you. A number one mistake as well, a very common mistake as well, is having no knowledge or little knowledge about an organization. And I always say there's no excuse for that because you have a lot of time to prepare for interviews, at least in most cases. So you can do everything from Google searching to pulling up press releases to asking potential contacts about an organization that maybe have worked with that company in the past. It's critical to do research on the front end and make sure you're very, very knowledgeable of that company and have something to bring to the table when the company asks you, for instance, hey, what do you know about us? Bosses indicating eye contact is critically important. So you see there about 2/3 of bosses want to make sure that whoever they're interviewing is making appropriate eye contact with them and connecting with them in that nonverbal way. In meeting new people, 55% of the impact comes from the way in which a person dresses. So again, reflecting back to last week and some of the work that you've done for attending the career fair, we've always encouraged you to dress business professional. And I think that's a critical piece for establishing that good positive first impression. So making sure the clothes you wear, the attire you have is appropriate for that interview setting. The number one question that comes up for us in interview situations is that tell me about yourself. Very similar to that elevator pitch that you had a chance to practice last week. So making sure you have some talking points ironed out about your background, for instance, in IT, why you're pursuing the MSIT major, how you think you could be an asset to a company or an organization, for instance. And then the final thing that comes up, and this one was in fact surprising to me, but I think it's important to address, is a common interview mistake that comes up is not asking for the job. So if you feel like you've had a good interview and you feel confident and comfortable with your connection with that employer, recognize that you can ask for a job on the spot and just say, hey, what are the next steps? I'm really interested in this opportunity. Is this something you would consider? Contact process for an interview. What does this look like? Employers generally contact you either in person, if they have a chance to connect with you that way. It could occur through our PAL application, our professional assessment and learning application, which we'll cover later in the semester. That is something that could occur. It could be something also that's directed from me as your practicum advisor, and just recognizing behind the scenes that I refer resumes and I'm connecting students with employers on a constant basis. So for you, just a critical component to know is, from this point forward, recognize that your phone could receive a message, or you could receive an email or even a text at any given time as you are starting out this practicum job search. So making sure that you're checking your phone on a regular basis, you're checking your voicemail, your text messages from new numbers, and you're responding promptly to those employers, ideally within 24 hours or so. So some preparation necessities. Company research, again, just reiterating, is huge. No general company information, no information about the particular job you're applying for. Even look into past employment experiences of students. Those could be co-op students at the University of Cincinnati or former practicum students that are a part of your network. And feel free to reach out to them through LinkedIn or through your classes or some other mechanism. And feel free to try and gain some additional preparation knowledge there from your peers. No basic types of interview questions. We're going to cover these in some of the upcoming components of this class, but differences between directed questions, behavioral-based questions, situational questions, or experience or resume-focused interview questions, and know how to address those in a given situation. And then make sure you know all of the details of that interview. There's nothing worse than not knowing the exact details of when you're supposed to meet with an organization and who you're meeting with. So know the location, the parking instructions, where you're supposed to be, and know the contact for that company. And then finally, just kind of company research that I recommend. Know the management team. So I always recommend doing some research on the C-suite executives and the background of those individuals, as well as those particular directors within, for instance, your information technology department. And so that could be a director of cybersecurity. It could be a director of networking and systems administration. It could be a director of software application development or something. So know those individuals and some basic backgrounds about them. Read press releases, anything that comes out in the news, anything that's significant, in particular those things that are very positive for that company, as those are good, often very good talking points to bring up, and they're things that show the company that you've done some of that prior research on the front end. I recommend Googling the company, taking a look at their website, specifically going to their website, looking for mission, core values, and kind of how those align, and anything is fair game in terms of the way in which a company articulates itself. That is their intention, not only to articulate themselves to their organization, but also to external constituents. So feel free to bring up any talking points about their values and their mission, and anything that aligns with you in particular. Look at competitors within the company. It often gives you a good idea of other comparable organizations. Hoovers.com is a good resource for this if you're looking to do some of that competition research. And then know the particular job function for which you're applying, and have some talking points set aside for how your skill sets or your competencies align with that job. In terms of what you should bring, these are essentials I recommend for every interview. Have your Padfolio with resumes, references, if at all possible. You don't necessarily have to bring those, I guess, in hard copy form, but if those are accessible and you have a separate resume sheet or a references sheet, please include that. It's definitely not going to hurt. Feel free to have a copy of the job description for the position that you've applied to, as this could be helpful to reference potentially throughout the interview process. And then if you have copies of representative work, projects you've done, things that could exemplify a particular talent of yours that aligns with the job, having copies of those can often be helpful. And if you don't need, or if you don't have hard copies of those, consider embedding copies of your work within your electronic portfolio for this class, as that can be a really, really nice tool to illustrate the skill sets that you possess and how you could be an asset to an organization. Have pen, have paper for taking notes. Make sure you have the details of the directions in terms of where you're going. Have the phone number of the person you're meeting with, and then I recommend, if at all possible, leaving your phone in the car so it's not a distraction for you or the interviewer. So this is the end of part one, interview preparation. We're going to take a look at some possible interview questions and types of interviews that you're going to encounter in some future segments.